Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So about a year ago, I ran into this acoustic guitar. I mean, I know we don't talk about acoustics a lot on this channel because, there's not a lot for me to talk about them, but this has to be the most insane J-45 that will ever exist. But just a little bit of background information on the J-45. It's essentially what people call the workhorse guitar. A lot of people have used them. They're great for taking to gig. They're pretty versatile. They were first introduced in 1942. And currently today, within the 50s collection, this is what an original style J-45 will look like. We can see it's a rounded shouldered Gibson, so it's not the square ones like the Doves that we were talking about or the Hummingbirds. You have a fairly simple bridge design on this one. Not a fancy guitar by any means. This one has a nice bursted finish. The headstock doesn't have any fancy inlays. It's just got the regular Gibson silkscreen, small button tuner tips. Looks like mahogany back and sides with a mahogany neck, rosewood fretboard, and a Sitka spruce top. Despite not being ultra fancy, these things are rather expensive brand new because of everybody who's used them. They've got a heritage to it. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever actually sat down with a J-45 before. I'm curious if these things would change the way that I feel about Gibson acoustics in general, because I'm more so a Taylor acoustic guy. But today we go from this workhorse to this. Oh man, now we're talking. This has to be the most insane quilt top that I have ever seen on any Gibson guitar ever. And just as a reminder, I've owned this Spotlight Special before. And while that was an amazing top, I think this one is even crazier because you can literally see these veiny lines. And what pushes this one over the top is you see something that you almost never see Gibson do. It's nearly perfectly book matched. All the lines match up perfectly on both sides. Now it looks like some of the figuring doesn't necessarily translate to both sides, so that's why I say nearly almost. As far as the wood grain lines, that is quite stunning. But then we get to the finish, iguanaburst. I get it. I totally understand why some people might not like iguanaburst, but I kind of like green guitars when it's done right. This one's got that perfect dark green on the outside, but then it gradually turns into this lighter green color before turning into this yellow. As far as burst jobs go, this one is magnificent and perfect for me. But continuing on here, this does not just have regular binding. It kind of looks like it's got a checkerboard pattern going on. I'm sure once we zoom in here, we'll see what it actually is, but it's some sort of dots just to make it look extra fancy. And on top of all that, take a look at our rosette here. Over here, it looks like it's about 3-ply on a regular one, whereas this one, we actually get the double rosette. So it's just so ultra and fancy. You get the tortoiseshell pickguard on it. It's such a night and day difference between these two. Oh, and don't forget, usually these things have a Sitka spruce top. This is a maple top, so that changes everything about this guitar just from that. I've heard some acoustic guys say maple is not the best tone wood when it comes to acoustic guitars, so maybe that's actually a bad thing, but I don't think I've personally tried that myself yet. But it looks like our bridge is the exact same. They didn't do anything too crazy with that. But when we move up to the neck, that's where things also start to get different. This has a binding. A regular J-45 does not have that. And on top of that, instead of boring dot inlays, we've got these things that I have never seen before. I'm sure it's been used on something that I'm just not familiar with, but you get a diamond-shaped pattern, and then you get like 2 paper airplane triangles going on with them. And I'm so thankful that they did that, because if they would have put dot inlays on something this fancy looking, that'd be kind of a letdown in my opinion. And the arrow shapes seem to match what they did with the binding, so I think that's some nice canon within this guitar as well. But it appears that they have some sort of rosewood fretboard on here, so that's at least regular J-45 spec. And then we move on to the headstock. It's labeled custom, and they have that same inlay that they have on the fretboard, except for they've rotated it vertically. And I think that looks fantastic. And hey, the Gibson mother of pearl inlay on this one. So again, completely different. And instead of little buttons, we get the Kluson style tuners. This is looking great. But let me tell you, you haven't even seen the half of it yet. We get to the back. Oh my. So we've got the center seam line, and then once again, the same crazily quilted maple back material, which is not what you would normally find. Once again, normally mahogany. But the back actually holds my biggest critique. I don't like how they did the extended burst. I would have rather this had just been the light teardrop shape, similar to what you see on the top, because the yellow doesn't extend up to here, and if it did, this whole guitar wouldn't have even been featured in this video. So this was a little bit of a letdown, but with figuring such as this, can you really be that upset with this example? And the back binding is just single ply, so it'll actually have a completely different appearance from that front binding. And then we get to this glorious neck. It's 2 parts maple, 1 part walnut. That's not what you normally have on a J-45 either, and this is just as heavily inflamed. You know, come to think of it, I don't think I have ever seen a quilted neck on a Gibson guitar. It's always flame. What's up with that? I've seen a few quilty bird's eye maple fenders, but if anybody has a nice little photo of a quilted maple neck on a Gibson, feel free to share that to me on my Facebook page. But I'm so happy they got the finish right on the neck. They didn't do too much of a burst. They did just enough right here, and it never got super yellow. And I think that's the key to this iguana burst. Like the top, it's not in your face yellow, but in the back, it is in your face. That's where you go from iguana burst kind of over into the gecko territory. A little goes a long way. But furthermore, back here we get the Gibson Custom Shop decal and the back of the headstock. Ooh, what happened here? Jeez, I thought this was like a brand new guitar. Maybe it's a little older than I thought, because that's a little bit of wing separation happening there. And I can't quite make out our serial number, but there does appear to be one there, so I'm not sure when they made this thing. But going back to this photo, you can actually see the back's quilted figuring on the natural wood on the inside. Now, unfortunately, there's not very many good photos of the sides, but this also looks like it's maple. So they've just turned the J-45 into an all maple beast. I think that's kind of what the Gibson Starburst is, isn't it? Yep, we got a maple top, maple back, multi-piece. Some of these have more pieces than others. Yeah, I would say they just kind of gave it Starburst specs. Not quite the same front binding and obviously the Florentine cutaway, but I think you guys get what I'm going for. Oh cool, it looks like we do have access to the serial number. So 2012, impressive. When I first found this thing, I thought it was like brand new. No, this was a used listing. J-45 iguanaburst. Looks like it wasn't finished until early 2013. And it looks like it was some sort of like a dealer award guitar. Like they sell so many things, they're willing to mess with the genetics of a traditional J-45. And it just got a pretty basic case. So now, the big question is, how much was this beast? $5,568.92. Sorry, you can't buy it, and it was located in Japan by Ishibashi Music, essentially like the Japanese Guitar Center. Is it worth that much money? I don't know. I'm not much of an acoustic guy, but if I was going to buy a really fancy, nice-looking acoustic, this might be a contender. The only reservations I have is typically super, ultra, crazily quilted tops like this have very little movement. For example, going back to my old Spotlight I used to own, this thing has a ridiculous top, right? But it didn't move at all in person, so it was kind of a letdown. I much more preferred number 36 because it would actually move. This one was a really boring flame top, but number 22, I believe it is, this had the most active top. It looked terrible in photos half the time, but it was one of the most exciting ones to have in person. So just because you see crazy quilt on something does not necessarily mean it will be crazy in person. But I'm curious, can we find any other examples of this? Because if they made one, maybe they made more than one. But it does not look like it. Can we even find anything iguanaburst? No. How about on Google? Well, looks like they did an SJ200 in iguanaburst, but in my opinion, that looks awful because they didn't get the fade right. This could look way cooler than it does if they would have got that faded finish right. And I think that's what most people have against this finish. They see a bad example like that. This one, they didn't quite get enough yellow. I don't know if I like that one either, but hey, maybe there was like a limited run where they just tried this finish on all the cool acoustics. This one's a Doves in Flight. Can't say I love that one. It looks more like algae burst to me. There's something truly special about the paint job on this one. Oh, and here's even a hummingbird version, which don't normally have maple necks, backs, and sides either. So essentially they turned it into a very fancy dove with a hummingbird pickguard and a hummingbird bridge. Cool, so it must have been some sort of a crazy Japanese limited run, and that's why I love shopping for guitars in Japan. You never know what you're gonna find. So for our playing demo today, let's check out a Gibson J-45. The only question left, would you rock this J-45 or not? Leave your answer down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.